You want to give a little bit of intro of your situation?
Yeah, well, I'm for a player that has been playing on and off since before Big Bang. I really have zero progress because yeah, I have like 4 different accounts that I kept losing, like Bara,
Okay.
Scardor, and Reboot.
So really
I had, like,
dedicated. Right? Really dedicated to the game for a period and then not anymore. Oh, I think we lost you. Hello? Did you press a mute button on the microphone when you were holding it? Okay, he's clicking buttons, I see. He's deafened me.
Just stopped working for some reason.
Yeah, I hear you again. Hello?
It doesn't like being touched.
No, I guess not.
I don't know.
Unfortunate.
But yeah, just I've never cubed like before now. I've never cubed something past epic. Just to tell you like how I really don't progress much. In this
Okay.
game.
And is that a problem, do you think, or?
Well, now it's not that bad. I've been playing Reboot for 2 weeks, and I've had more progress than in the past.
Than ever
10
before?
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's going. Yeah, you'll see. I have nothing but this emblem.
Nice.
Which I got like I didn't know how lucky that was because I think it took me like just a couple occult to get epic, and then like 3 like the unique one you can buy from the shop to get it to unique, and then I spent like I had like for some reason on my Blaze Wizard, which I don't know why I had one because I don't even enjoy the class, but it was there. I spent like maybe 500 million, and I still have cubes left over, so that was cool. First legendary cube ever. It's actually, yeah.
It's got to start somewhere, so that's your pride and joy now.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm kind of a bit lost to like which path to take for progress in general.
So you're very new in general. So how do you enjoy playing video games? Like, what do? Do you just kind of jump in and kind of see what happens, or do you look up 16 million guides and?
Generally, I try to look guide for what's efficient because I don't have as much time as I used to. So that's pretty much it. I try to watch videos, but it's like a lot of different stuff. I'm not sure like where to start. It's like I know there's Legion, okay, link skills. Okay, but do I XP my character first to be able to do like arcane dailies first, so that you know so I'm kind of like mixed between all the systems in which to prioritize more. That's pretty much I think the main thing we're gonna be doing here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that.
Because so what is your like a week for you look like? Like how many hours do you have in a day?
So
or do you want to spend in a day, I guess?
I realistically I could probably during the week I could spend like 4 to 6 hours on the game, and then on weekends it's like, you know, it's a weekend. I could play
healthy amount, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally,
healthy amount.
Totally healthy, balanced lifestyle amount of like 14 hours a day.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're also willing to do that, or is there other stuff that you're trying to do?
No, I mean, I was playing like, I guess Valorant a bit, but I play like 1 game a day at most, so it's not.
Okay.
It's not like, oh no, I'm gonna not play Valorant today. What a bummer.
What a bummer, yeah. Oof. A day not Valoranted is a day not lived, right? Or not that extreme.
Yeah, it doesn't like. I mean, I've been playing way more Maple in the past 2 weeks than anything else. So, yeah, I mean, it's just beginner gear. There's nothing much to it. The emblem was like the most exciting thing.
Yeah, well, I think it is the thing that you want to be upgrading the most in the beginning, so that also makes sense.
That's what I watch in videos, like weapon, secondary, and that. I was like, well, the weapon is secondary. I'm gonna replace them later on, so I started with the emblem.
Yeah. So far, so good. That's good. That's good. information that you found, and then using the information for your situation well as well. That's a successful assessment there, I would say.
And I wanted to start cubing the secondary. I was like, oh wait, what's the best in SA? It's like, oh, princess number drop. Okay, what's the boss HP? 300 billion. Okay, we'll wait a bit for that.
Wait a bit, yeah. Yeah, and as a shadower, you eventually the princess node is actually not that important. There's another shield actually that's better, because the shield can Star
demon
Force.
Something 130 you can craft, right? Something like that.
Yeah, Deimos Shadow Shield, yeah.
Oh yeah. Can I craft that like now? Or
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we can get into that a little bit. So when it comes to your have you looked in like traits at all? Like traits and professions? Have you looked into that a little bit?
I mean, I had I had been doing professions in the past, but only thing I remember was like disassembling like high level gear for like these superior crystals or whatever. That's all I remember. I didn't really craft much. I think I was doing that for Mesos on normal servers. I think that was the gist of it.
Yeah, another thing you can do on Reboot is to make money is to extract the equips so that you can get what's called philosopher stones. These are these shiny rocks with like rainbow colors. They look like where are they? They look like this. Because I think in non-reboot I don't think they're worth anything, but in reboot they sell for 300k each. So that's actually a better way of getting value than NPCing all of your gear.
Selling.
Yeah. So it makes more sense to extract. And if you want to be able to extract all the high-level equips, the best thing is to level alchemy for that and get it to level 6. That way you can level, you can extract equips of all levels, and you could do 10 items at a time with alchemy, versus only 5 items at a time with the other ones. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's yeah, and to level up alchemy in the chat, I don't know how familiar you are with the commands and everything. You can check exclamation mark
I've seen
professions.
that your stream has some commands. I haven't looked into them. But yeah. Okay.
So yeah, a lot of this stuff, if you go like very deep into all of these topics, we're gonna be like 5 hours in.
10 hours.
yeah, or 10 maybe. Yeah. So I'll just give you like a quick rundown, and then we can, go topic by topic and make sure that everything passes by a little bit, and then I'll give you like where all the details are, and then after we go through all of that, most of the things will be clear, and then if something still isn't clear, then we can always talk in chat afterwards. Yeah, so that's going to be the main thing in the beginning, alchemy, and then if you want to be able to make the shield, you're going to have to level up what's called smithing. And the easy way to level up smithing, that's also in the video, is by just crafting this always lags a little bit when you open up smithing. I don't know, too many items or something. Here in the projectile category, you can make... so if you craft something, and you're just trying to build up, you don't really have to worry about the success percentage here. If the success percent is like 0%, but you're trying to build up the mastery here so you can level it, it's still good, because even if you fail, you get half the amount of mastery for it. So you just kind of brute force your way through. Yeah, exactly. So the best thing to make early on is with aquamarine and with diamonds is to make these bows here, and you will fail in the beginning, but you'll get levels really quickly.
And where are these like farmed like on the gemstones on the maps you can harvest?
Exactly. So make sure that you have your mining and your herbalism learned, and also in Reboot you can learn all of the professions. So you can be accessory crafter and you can be all of the things at once, as you see here. So you can just learn all of them in the beginning as soon as you reach level 33. And then I would say always harvest the big flowers and the big veins you see. So like the heartstones and the big floaty rocks and the gold flowers and the big floaty flowers. I would always harvest those if you see them.
Do you need to do that every character you plan on playing, or is like you can just have one really like progressed production skill character and then he can craft things for other people, or not?
Kind of, but some stuff is untransferable, right? So untradeable, like if you talk about the shields. Yeah, you have to make them on the character itself, yeah. Some of the potions and stuff that you make with alchemy might be transferable, so you don't necessarily have to do that. But yeah, when it comes to the shields, you definitely have to make it on the character itself, yeah.
Alright. I guess I'll
But again, there's no pressure there, right? It's going to take a while. The recipe drops from normal Cygnus, so that's around the same level as Princess Snow, I think. But that's like a little further down the road. But you can also get the shield recipe from the... there's a few characters that a few monsters that drop it, but I believe the mutant pigs drop it. If I say mutant pig, it probably doesn't find it. I think it's mutant ribbon pig, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, here we go. Yeah, there's like a few MapleStories, and these guys will also drop the recipe. As you see, they're like level 170, so you have to be a decent level, and then you need drop rate and all that stuff. So best chance is to get it from normal Cygnus as a drop, so that might be a few weeks of killing her with even like a drop coupon to try to get the recipe. But you want to be level 10 smithing to make sure that you have a high chance of successfully making the shield. And then you'll need to get the materials and everything.
Yeah, I just actually, like, I'd say like an hour ago, I just beat easy Cygnus and normal Magnus for the first time. So
yeah, the jump is not that. The jump from easy Cygnus to normal Cygnus isn't insanely huge, so it's not too far away, I would say.
I think I saw a website where it said like something like 2 mil range, but every time I realize I can clear them with lower ranges, just takes a bit more time.
Yeah, there's some stuff like that, and we'll get into that, like, you know, what you want to be looking at to see if you can kill things and if you can't kill things. We'll get to that, but I guess since you were asking about the shield first, I wanted to make sure that we have that done, and then the connection with the professions and the trade. So that's a way to make money, right? By extracting the gear, getting the Philosopher's Stones. You can sell the Philosopher's Stones. Eventually you're going to need them a little bit, but you can always make them back very quickly. So it's fine to just NPC them in the beginning to make that extra money. And the other thing you can do for extra money is do Ursus runs. I don't know if you've been doing that. Yeah.
But sometimes it's really hard to find the randos. Like,
are you playing on EU or on NA?
No, NA. It's just like after reset, it's okay, but the problem, I come back at like midnight from work, so at that time I've never had like a group be found, so I just tried the next morning. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes,
well, there's
like, I find one.
Yeah, there's 2 times during the day when there's double Meso for Ursus, and everyone runs during that time and not outside of that time ever. So for that, I'll also have like...
that's what the times 2 meant.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I have exclamation mark Ursus as well, and if you use that, and the bot feels like it wants to respond, you can see the information there on like which times there's double money, and during that time, everyone will be running. So if you can't run during that, you know, you might as well just run whenever, but if you can during that time, that's when everyone is going to be running, and it's going to be super easy to find a party. If you're still pretty new, or if you're laggy, or if you're not super strong, like random group might actually be a little bit too... They might be a little bit too overzealous and a little bit too fast, and sometimes you don't get enough damage in. So I also run with people from the stream every day, and we run like 1 hour into it, so like an hour and a half before now, we run with people from the stream, but I don't know if you're home at that point, so it would have to depend on the day.
From like 1:30 p.m. to like midnight, I'm generally not here, so... Yeah. It's a bit, you know, my... It is what it is, though, you know.
Yeah. You're familiar with the UTC time? Because that's important to know when it comes to, like, resets and time zones. And...
I think, for me, it's like, it resets 8 p.m. EDT, I think. Something like that.
I believe... Yes, that sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, so...
So you're at minus, you're at -6, yeah. So if it says 1 to 5 a.m., so -6, that would be, for you, that would be -5 until -1. Or something like that, right? -6. No, minus...
Anyway.
Yeah, -5 until -1. And then the other one from noon to 4 is when it's, those 2 times is when it's double. So yeah, try to catch those times.
Oh, okay.
And then you also make twice the money, so that's also really cool because you have limited entries, right? Only 3 runs per day.
Yeah, okay, now it makes sense why I couldn't find some runs.
Yeah, no, exactly. Sometimes you're like, it's 1 second and everyone's in, and then sometimes nobody's running. And sometimes you'll log in and you'll get the Ursus pop-up of like, oh, it's double time, but it's not. But it's not. Sometimes it's wrong. So you always want to just make sure that you know what times it is and only check during those times.
Okay. Yeah, I've been doing. I'm only like 2 or 3 days. I've been trying to do Ursus and Maple
Tour
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much the only source of Mesos and bosses. I can do. So.
Yeah, early on, that's good. That's good stuff, and that kind of segues into what I have. So I have two big commands of mine that I think are going to be the main thing that you want to look at, and we'll kind of look through these things, and based on that, you know, that's probably going to be the one big thing that we look at. Those two things, and then the second big thing that we look at is like the general order in which which kind of sets of equips you try to go for, and how to move from one into the other, and like how far do you push items before you wait for the next piece, basically. I imagine that that's probably the two biggest things that we'll look at.
Okay.
So I guess you can, yeah. I mean, I'll show them on stream. So, so it's these two. So one is, one has all the content and how relevant it is, in my opinion. But here it is by level. On, you know, when the content I think is worth doing for people.
Okay.
And then the other one is basically how strong I think it's reasonable to be. And then strong is what you mentioned range already. That was very relevant like 10 years ago, but now range is it's not a good metric. There's too much stuff that gives you damage and makes you stronger that doesn't show up in range at all. And even within classes, depending on which buff happens to be active, you can have like 3 or 4 times your range, but if something else is different, you might actually do less damage. So range is just not a good metric to look at anymore. But instead, there's a bunch of other things. So I've grouped all of those things together into one big grid with the idea of like how far do you want to go with that, and this takes into account how you know, how many sources of those stats do you have, like what is your access, and how expensive is it to upgrade, and also how can you make sure you don't over upgrade so that you have to, you know, when you move from one stage to the next, that it means that you don't have to do all of the expenses again, right? That's all taken into account into this. And you see on the bottom here, like the goals of like which bosses and which stuff you can do, and that's connected again here, because there's a in Reboot there's a very big penalty for trying to kill monsters and trying to kill bosses that are way higher level than you. And you probably noticed that if you played non-Reboot before and you go to Reboot and then you try to do your regular leveling at the regular levels, you can't kill the monsters at all. You get way too much damage reduction.
When I started playing, I was like, why am I not killing these monsters?
Yeah.
Man, they have so much HP.
Exactly. And it's, yeah, well, so they have more HP, and you're starting with a lower legion and no links, of course, but also the damage penalty, like all those things combined make it so that you can almost, in the beginning, you're almost never killing monsters more than 5 levels ahead of you. And even if you're really strong, like 10 levels is the absolute max.
Yeah, like guides, like for example, for a leveling guide, for example, they would tell me at like 170 to go like to one spot where the monster is like 170, like 182, for example. That's the guide. It tells me. Then I would just stay at my current for like another 3-5 levels until I'm in the 5 level range, and then I would switch because it felt way better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you often need like 10 times the damage just to get like 10% more EXP or something, right? It's always kind of like that. But if you're moving too quickly, then you need like 100 times the damage to get 10% more EXP. And of course, you can't just pull that out of your ass. You need to have the funds, and you need to have the levels and the legion and the links, and that's the main thing about this grid, is that everything has to kind of work together, and everything within itself has like a level of optimization and a level of value. And you don't want to go too hard on one thing and then completely neglect another source of damage. But this also helps you keep track of if there's something that you do like doing more. Like the main thing is Legion. Like some people like Legion a lot and they will level all the characters and they love it. And some people absolutely hate Legion and the fact that it even exists and that it's so important, and they just want to level one character always and completely ignore Legion if they can. So that's one of those.
I like Legion.
You like it?
I
Okay.
like leveling up characters. Like I said, Shadow's my main, but it's more like I like it. Don't get me wrong, but it's more like I want a character that farm, and he had Mesos, and his skill was cool. So I was like, oh, I'll use him as a first like main. But I think like. I don't know how far range can go in reboot compared to like normal, because in normal I see people like 100 million range. But,
yeah, you can have billions range, yeah, depending on the class and depending on the situation, yeah.
But it's pretty much like once, I mean it's really far down the line, but once I hit like $1 billion an hour Meso farming, which is like years from now, I think. Then I'll probably like focus on a second character, and then once that character is like up to a level I want, then you know I like a lot of different characters, so I'll, you know I don't think I'll like if we could tell like range by percentage, like 100% is like you max your character, I'd probably like stop at like 85-90 on Shadow and then switch and make another instead of like going all in on just one. I think that makes you more Mesos at the end. Well, I mean, I guess if you can kill Black Mage, but that's every month, right?
Right now, that's a monthly boss, yeah.
Yeah, that's 2.5. Yeah, it's just I don't know what's better, but that's what I'll do. Yeah.
When you say what's better, what do you mean by that?
Like, is it better to like completely, like after you obviously you get your legions and stuff? Is it better to like one character until you can like solo Black Mage on it, or is it better to like make boss mules instead, you know?
Like solo Black Mage is still like a whole that's very far away, like in percentages, from like being able to be in like a party that does Black Mage, right? Because when you get to that point, every single upgrade becomes very expensive. It takes a long time, and if you're barely doing enough damage to like for a party to kill it, from there to being able to solo, you need to do like 6 to 9 times the amount of damage, right? To compensate the whole team synergy and everything. So
what's the difference in solo versus party in terms of rewards?
You get to keep all the rewards yourself, plus the crystal doesn't get divided over 6 people, but just divided over 1 person. So you get the crystal will be 6 times the value compared to 6-man party.
Huh. So there's no disadvantage for clearing a boss in a party versus solo.
So there's a few things. If you're killing, and it kind of depends on boss to boss, but a lot of times it's more beneficial to do it solo in the sense that, well, so the boss crystal that we just talked about, but some equips also only have a chance to drop once or not at all, right? And if they do drop and you have 6 people, then typically, and it's something that multiple people want, you'll have something like a loot rotation, or you'll have like, it's somebody's week and they get the chance to loot first, right? Something like that. Because there's things called instance drops and share drops. So instance gets rolled for everyone individually, and whether you're soloing or you're in a party, there's no negative there, you know, because everyone that gets those drops gets them only for themselves, so other people can't see them, other people can't loot them. But when it comes to the shared drops, there you have to, as in the name shared, you have to share. So you have to make sure that you know beforehand who gets the loot, who wants the loot.
Wouldn't somebody's pet just steal it by accident?
So yeah, they've been tweaking how drop and everything works. In the beginning, they made it so. In the beginning, like everyone could loot everything, and then they made it so that the pets wouldn't loot anything. Then they made it so that the equips would be. They kept changing it, but every single time they changed it, there was still like some flaws. So now what happens is that if you hit the boss, if you kill the boss and you did the most damage, then your drop rate applies the drop rate to the boss when it dies. Or if it's a box at the end of the boss fight that you open up, then the person who did the most damage, their drop rate counts for all of the shared items. And then for all of the instanced items, it's your individual drop rate that you have at the moment where the box dies, as long as you're alive, basically.
Okay.
And when and then the pets, they will automatically loot everything that's instanced, so that only you can see and only you can loot anyway. And then when it comes to the share drops, the idea there is that everyone can manually loot it, or you can set the pickup loot for bosses to leader only, and then the leader can basically loot And so ideally, if it's like somebody's loot that week, you make them the leader. They set it to leader only so that they can loot the stuff to make sure that nobody can accidentally take stuff or, you know, maliciously take stuff. Although, you know, it doesn't seem to work perfectly. There's some bosses where things can still get looted or pets still loot everything. But it's mostly the content that is not coming over from Korea, but from other regions, and that interacts a little bit funky with the game sometimes. So there's still some less than perfect interactions, but that's the general idea behind it, you know.
Alright.
But yeah, soloing Black Mage is probably, like, I don't know how many people have done it, but if I had to guess, maybe like 20 people or something. So
in Reboot, you mean? Or
yeah.
in general?
In Reboot GMS, most likely, yeah.
Because in Reboot, like, even if we do everything perfectly, we will, if I understand, we will never reach the range of normal servers because they have way more stuff to boost their range, right?
Yeah, or range, like the stat will be way higher, right, because of bonus potential. We have more final damage though, so I'm not sure how far the range would be off. I would have to throw everything in like a calculator, but the total access to total damage should be higher in non-reboot. Yeah, they can go for legendary familiars and that kind of stuff, right? So that's boss damage IED that they could get on top of it, and they have scrolling, of course. So all of that stuff together. They they just have more sources of damage, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. I will probably never get bonus. I mean, it's been years since Reboot got released and never dropped. So
I mean, yeah, the flip side of that is that they're gonna have to like pay off. We get, like, in Reboot you get to pay off your mortgage, and in non-Reboot you have to spend that on cubes, right? So there is a flip side to that as well.
But isn't there a problem? Like, okay, they release Black Mage, barely anyone can sell it. Like, if they release another tier of content, will there reach a point in Reboot where we just can't keep up? Like, nobody's ever gonna be able to solo like the next release, for example.
Well, when you say solo like Black Mage, that's like a pretty like crazy feat that very few people can do. There's a very big gap between a new boss comes out and then 6 months later the first parties can clear it versus someone just rolls in solo and destroys it. You have to have such orders of magnitude of power extra that's really that's really something that only comes very, very far down the road. The main problem, I think, at this point is GMS is always going to have a leg up against KMS, you know, just like Reboot in GMS is kind of like behind, quote unquote, or at a disadvantage to non-Reboot. In the same way, KMS is in a big disadvantage compared to us. Like, they don't have Sweetwater stuff, they don't have Gollux, they don't have rank of attack speed, they don't have level 3 links, they don't have...
The Gollux bus doesn't exist in KMS.
It doesn't exist, they don't have familiars at all, so we have way more damage and attack speed and everything over them. So everything that already comes from Korea and the whole game is already easier for us, because we already have access to more stuff. So even if, you know, GMS, like non-Reboot, still has it easier than us, we already still have it easier than what the game was designed for. So in terms of like trying to compare or trying to feel like we're going to be behind, we're still in a good spot, you know, compared to what the game was designed for. So I think the main problem, quote unquote, might be that we're like behind now is the restriction of totems, right? Because non-Reboot does have access to Frenzy Totems and Frenzy Totem service that is unlimited, quote unquote. But in Reboot, you are limited by the amount of totems that you can get, right? The amount of Fury Totems, and that's and then that's it. You don't have more. If you want to scale up, you need to get an extra character to the same level, and then, you know, earn reward points there and buy totems, and then totem yourself with like a second account or a third account or a fourth account. That's the only way you can scale up past the first one. And the problem is going to be, as you get to the higher level areas, like level 270, 275, 280, 285, it's going to be incredibly hard to do that with other characters, of course, because of the totems that you will need to get those levels in the first place, and then you won't have any totems left to totem yourself with. So past a certain point, that scaling is going to hurt. But they already said that totems are not going to work past level 300, so then everyone should be more on equal footing on progress and on how reachable certain goals are and everything.
Level 300. That's is gonna be
Yeah,
not
now,
now.
yeah, now
Not
mathematically it's like
now.
15 years away or something for reboot because of the lack of totems. But there's more areas that are gonna come out. You know, there's new stuff,
Yeah.
new stuff every 6 months. New area odium coming out. You know.
The one thing, because I understand there's two things in stats that I just want to understand before we move on to another subject. It's
Mhm.
just the first thing is I understand attack, like for example the emblem, right? That
Mhm.
cube. I know that people say attack is better, right, than like damage, for example, right?
Mhm.
But why does damage, like if like I remember cubing and I compared like to the one I black cubed it, and the
Mhm.
one with damage showed like higher range gain than the one with attack,
Yeah.
like why?
Yeah. This goes deeper into like how the damage calculation is done. Basically, there's a few clumps of damage that get or of sources of damage, I should say, and each one of those sources then gets multiplied all together. So one source of damage, for example, is called damage, right? And then the base
Yeah.
damage is 100%. Like if you have 0% damage and 0% boss damage and you're attacking a monster, you're still doing damage because there's still a baseline of just 100% damage that you're just always doing. And then that damage is added up with the damage stat in your stat window. And then if you're attacking a normal monster, it also takes the stat of damage to normal monsters. And if it's a boss damage, it also takes the stat of boss damage. And those get all added up together into one clump. And that's one source of what's called final damage, basically. And then another clump is, for example, like ignore enemy defense, IED. If you're attacking bosses, then that you look at how much that is, and that becomes a penalty depending on how much PDR the boss has, how much physical damage reduction the boss has. So your IED ignores a part of that PDR, and then if there's left, then you get a final damage penalty over that. Another clump of damage, for example, is stat. So it looks at all of your multipliable stat, it looks at your total percentage stat, it looks at your base stat, it looks at like the holy symbol, not the holy symbol, sorry, like Maple Warrior stat, which is a little bit different because it multiplies your base stat. And then it looks at your static stats. So that's, for example, your member bonuses in your Legion, or your luck in your hyperstats, or your stat that you get from symbols, because that does not get multiplied. So it looks at the multipliable, at the multiplier, turns that into a clump, adds the static, adds that all up together, and then that becomes like a quote-unquote final damage clump as well. So all of these clumps work together, but a lot of these can have internally... Most of these are additive, right? So the more you have of it, the less individual, the less of a percentage of your total damage they will represent. So when it comes to damage, the thing is there that eventually damage will become less valuable because you add up the boss damage and the damage together into a bigger clump with the 100% base. So if you can choose like 12% attack or 12% damage, eventually that 12% damage will become worth less. But if you are mobbing, and this is more again why the range is a bad metric to look at, the damage percentage that you have will be shown in your stat window, but because it's not diluted yet with the damage to normal monsters, it'll look stronger than it actually is, even though it's technically not wrong. But when you're bossing, that 12% attack is going to multiply also to the boss damage, whereas the 12% damage is only going to be part of the damage clump, and the total multiplication is going to make it so that eventually it's most likely better to have the percentage attack, because the total amount of sources of percentage attack is lower, and that comes back down to the balance of everything, like what would make sense. So there,
right now, damage is better because it's
better
like
isn't. It'll give you
everything I have-
more without. If you have no damage to normal monsters, it'll probably give you more damage to normal monsters. Yeah, but when you're optimizing, you're typically optimizing for bosses, so that's already one thing, and that's something you can't see from stat window. And the other thing is, the more you get damage to normal monsters through either your hyperstats or your Legion grid later on, the more you get that, the more that those numbers will get diluted as well, and comparatively the stronger percentage attack will get, on top of the fact that once you get more Star Force, once you get stronger weapons, once you get better flames, the total amount of attack that you get will increase more, which means that comparatively the percentage attack lines will also become more valuable because they'll have more stuff to multiply.
So for now it's slightly better, but it'll get increasingly worse the more I upgrade, basically.
Yeah, not worse, but less good. But yeah,
worse than attack. If
diminishing returns.
I have like, I just stopped there because I have like a few cubes left, but I thought.
No, this is fine. Yeah. If you get a line of attack and a line of damage and a line of luck, like all of the 3 lines are actually doing something, this is totally fine to keep. Yeah, for sure.
And I have cubes left. I don't know if I'll be able to use them in less than 30 days, but for now I'll just keep them in case. I have
you'll find something. Well, this goes more into the the second topic of like what do you upgrade and how far do you upgrade. But I mean it is connected here, right? So here you look at like the total amount of Star Force, for example. But yeah, to touch on that topic a little bit, it's generally a good idea. Or less of a good idea, like a less efficient idea. You got lucky, right? And you didn't use too many cubes, so that's fine. Yeah. But in general, you don't want to do like one item and upgrade it all the way and then go to the next item. Because every progressive level of potential usually introduces a whole bunch of, new fucky stats that don't really give you anything. Yeah.
And get like 9% every equip than one like legendary
because you saw the price of the cubes, right? Like the cult cubes are everywhere. It's really easy to get 3%, and then the Master Craftsman cubes, those are already substantially more expensive. And then you get into red and black cubes, and now you're like, oh wow, okay, now it's really expensive everywhere.
I spent all the money I had on this account for this one. It was worth it because I got lucky, but. And then I looked at the actual rates. I'm like, wait, that was stupid lucky. It's like 6% chance of upgrading.
Yeah, and you don't know. It's possible that if you spread all that money over all of your other items, it's possible that you wouldn't have gotten that much, or it's possible that you would have gotten way more. But then you would have had to figure out for all of those equips, how long am I going to be keeping those? Like how far do I want to be able to take those? For this item, you were sure that, you can go very far with it and you're going to keep it for a long time. So it's more of a, more of a confirmation there that you can push harder on that piece. Yeah.
That's basically right now, that's the only equip that I will keep. In the long run, that's the only thing.
The only thing that
ring,
like Saren replaces it. If you get the drop from Saren, that's like a boss. That's like beyond Black Mage. So
if I reach that point, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
No, I don't think so either. No, I think your income will probably be mirroring your ability to upgrade that. Yeah. That's why it's a very safe bet. So for all the stats here, so level makes sense, right? That one's straightforward. Main stat, you know where to find that. So sometimes people do it with Maple Warrior, sometimes without. But that's just like how much total luck you have here when you add them all together. So you're at 3.6 now, and it's very normal for
that's with every buff. That's every buff.
Yeah, so it's normal that in the beginning that's gonna fluctuate pretty heavily. It'll depend on Legion and luck. On Legion and Link skills a bit, but a lot of it is just going to rely on, did you get like 3% luck on all of your equips? If you can get everything to 3%.
That's what I'm trying on my occult, like you can still have like 3%.
Yep.
And I'm trying to, that's pretty much it. And then I don't know, like once I have 3% rare on everything, like do I, for example, for this Silver Blossom ring, do I buy like a scroll from Legion shop to be able to cube it and get more luck?
Yeah, so for when it comes to potential, so I have exclamation mark epots usually for that, it stands for epic potential scrolls. There's a list there of things where you can get epic potential scrolls. What I would advise early on is to use as few potential scrolls as possible, because you want to make sure that if you have an item that really needs them, that you have a few built up. So what I would do is, if you're still actively killing a boss that can drop the piece with potential, then I wouldn't do it yet. Yeah, I wouldn't work on it yet. So like you can still do Horntail every day, right? And the next very next Horntail you kill might drop a Silver Blossom Ring with potential, and then you've essentially wasted what is now a really valuable potential scroll. So I would,
because it's 300 Legion coin for me. That's like even with the quest.
I have like 85,000 coins. I've only bought like one or two. I've only bought like two of them. I would
give me some.
Yeah, I'll share some.
I need.
Yeah, but don't spend them all in one place. But yeah, I think that's a pretty expensive thing. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I would try to
I bought one.
Work around
my
it.
Secondary, and I don't regret it, but because I don't know how long I'll keep the frozen secondary.
You'll keep it for a bit.
I guess for a bit. I don't know if it's worth like cubing higher than Epic though.
Most likely not. If Epic, Epic or Unique, it kind of depends on where you're gonna be, but Epic is probably fine. Yeah.
So do I just like get 3% on every equip, and then I stack up like 100 occult, and then I go on one and I try to get it Epic and 9% on it, and then I go 9% everything? Is that basically the way to go?
Yeah, so we can dip into that second part, I guess, a little bit, and on how far you go. In the beginning, it's really going to be a matter of, trying to get the pieces that have any kind of potential. If they can also have a nice flame, that would also be nice, right? The green numbers on the item. And while you're still actively running the bosses, I think it's good to not overcommit and to wait until you see a piece that's like really, really solid. So let's say that you had all of these same equips. When it comes to the potential of all of these well, not potential as in specifically the potential, but like their capacity for damage.
Flame?
The Chaos Horntail Necklace is probably in a really good spot where I would say if you find that as an item, like it doesn't get flame advantage that early on, but it has 20 luck. That's comparatively, that's pretty good. You're most likely not gonna be killing Horntail and getting anything better than that. So you can definitely already work on Occult Cubes, roll 3%. And get some Star Force, get it to 10. Like, that's really good. That's a solid piece that early on. But if you look at other pieces like the earring the earring has 40 luck, so that's also pretty nice. So you can also get 3% there. So I would be okay with Star Forcing that one already as well, and just getting that one to 10 Star Force just to get that little bit extra. And the Silver Blossom Ring, I would just wait until you get one with potential, and then just reveal that, roll a cold for 3%, and then Star Force that one. You know, and that way you can, because your resources are so limited, you don't want to already like go all in, even though all in doesn't mean as much, but like go all in on a piece, and then the very next day maybe find one that's like, oh shit, I should have done this instead.
It has better flames or whatever.
Because the flame itself, if you get lucky on one flame, that flame itself could be better than your potential and your Star Force and your current flame on an item by itself, just as if it's a lucky flame. So that could be a whole bunch of money that's just completely like, well, now you basically, it's really hard to justify that previous investment. So it's more important to focus definitely around weapon, secondary, and emblem, right? And getting those typically immediately almost to epic, and then sometimes maybe up to unique, right? Now you have one legendary, so the other two staying epic is probably fine because that balances that out. And then everything else to rare, get 3% on everything. And then if something happens to tier up with occult cubes, you can keep rolling it for 6. But I wouldn't actively use occult cubes to try to tier up from rare to epic. It typically takes way too long. It's way too many rolls. I would either use just Master Craftsman cubes to try to tier it up, or if you find epic potential scrolls. But then specifically for pieces that you know you're going to be keeping and that where epic makes sense, and that's where Transfer Hammer comes into play. And have you used that before, Transfer Hammering?
No.
So Transfer Hammer is probably the single most important system in Transfer Hammer in Reboot because we have no trade. So that means that a lot of stuff that we have, you have to know what Transfer Hammer is and how it works for you to really see an item for what it is. Because if I see the Diacitus earrings, I can see like, okay, it's level 130 and it has okay, the flame numbers are big, so I can from that I can derive that it has flame advantage and that it has capacity for really good flames, but that also means that this one is already pretty good. It could go to 3-line, it can get potential, it's an accessory, so it can get dropped on the Mesos
I don't understand flames a lot. because it's a new system that wasn't there when I played. So,
Mhm.
like, how do you like? I see you look at an item like my earrings, and you'll see, oh yeah, that's I don't know, a 79 score. Like,
Mhm.
how? Like, or like the limit of the range on it, is that like on a website somewhere for every equip or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a common answer, but there's a command where basically everything gets explained around that topic.
Okay.
I can do well when it comes to upgrading. Okay, I want to make sure that this is kind of like clear, like the progression and the daily stuff, and then we can go into fully like what upgrading is, and then do like the three branches there, right? Like star forcing, cubing, and flames there. So make sure that we have everything clear and that the topic is more well-rounded before we move on to the next one, because now it's kind of like floating from one into the other, which is normal because it's all connected, of course. But then I want to make sure we don't get to the end where you're like, now I know like a little bit of everything, but not enough to really feel like I can move forward, you know? So these, all of these have their own commands as well, where you can get more information. So we were talking about main stat, right? So you see right now you're at 3.6, and you're at what level were you? You just passed 200, right?
2-1.
2-1, yeah.
Yeah, this character is like 5 days old.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. There's probably some easy gains that you can make. So if I were to look through some of the stuff, right, we can see like occult cubes, right? Roll for 3%, roll for 6% if it's already epic. So you can immediately see like, oh, you probably want to get a 6% on the pants and on the top. Boom, that's 12% luck right there. The shoes, if you want to keep them, shoes flames aren't that great, so you probably just hold on to these, right? Keep doing normal Hilla, see if you can get a better flame shoe first, and then commit to that one. Some Star Force here and there, 3% on the glove and on the cape, or wait for a better Necro glove, right? Also from Hilla, if you can get that. And then you can very easily, like 6 here, 3 there, you add it all up together, it's probably an easy 30 to 40% luck. You add up some Star Force, and you're probably going to be like 4.5k stat, like pretty close to that 5k, you know? Okay, so it's not going to be, you're not going to be too far away from that. So by the time you get to like around 210.
I didn't know I could cube the given items from the event.
Oh yeah. You can use cubes and flames on this. You just can't use it to, you can't Star Force it. Yeah, and you cannot transfer. Actually, I'm saying that you can't Star Force. Can you actually Star Force these guys and just blow them up? I actually don't know. But you probably wouldn't want to do that.
No, you can't.
In my brain, I was like, you can't. But now that I'm saying that, it's like, am I actually 100% sure of that? I'm not sure.
I just tried in game.
I guess they're probably protecting you from doing that because they don't want you to be able to accidentally boom it.
Yeah, that would, if I would boom one of the items given to me, that would cost my range. Like, it would cut my range.
Your damage, yeah.
By a third or something.
Yeah, because the set bonus is really big, right? The attack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely occult. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, yeah. Of course.
If I lose the weapon, 100%. I'm back to like 200.
Well, you're back to 0 because you wouldn't have any range. You wouldn't be able to attack. Yeah. Not a good move there. Yeah.
Let me get a Zakum weapon real quick.
Yeah, the poisonic. Yeah, that's if you're running around with that, that's poverty to your stuff. But so that's basically stat, right? And stat is going to come from other sources as well. And once you Star Force more, that's why stat is probably most used right now as like instead of range. People say like, how much stat are you? Because that gives a way better indication of how strong you are. But again, the lower that is, the worse of an indication, right? Because all of these, you see all of these other stats. If all of these are really, really high and this one is really low, you might do way more damage than someone else where this is their highest and everything else is lower, right? So it all accordions like works together. But the higher your stat goes, the more you can assume that somebody knows a lot about the game and knows how to play the game, knows what to do, knows where to invest. And as a result, all of their other stats are most likely also going to be in this ballpark or even higher. And then their stat is a very good predictor of how strong they actually are. So if someone says, I'm 5k and you're also 5k, you can still be miles apart. But if someone says, I'm 60k stat, and someone else says, I'm also 60k stat, they're probably pretty close.
Okay.
So that's more what you're going to hear. And then critical rate is very important. because it gives you access to critical damage. Critical damage is a huge multiplier to damage, and if you're not hitting a crit, you're not getting any of the critical damage, you're getting 0. And the further you go in the game, the bigger of a difference you'll see between those orange numbers and those red numbers, right? Will be a huge difference in output, so getting a lot of crit rate early is very important. So that's also why working on Legion and Lynx is highly advised, because you can get a lot of crit there.
I'm at 81 already, and I think I can reach 100 just by Link and Legion, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you definitely can, yeah, and you have quite a decent amount of built-in crit on your character, so that gets you to that 100% pretty quickly, which means you can immediately capitalize on the critical damage, and then you can also work on the critical damage characters for the Legion buff, and then those can start increasing your damage very, very quickly. Damage, so here I talk about functional damage, so this is the specific goal is damage plus boss damage together, and then that total amount is like something that's going to be here. Of course, you know, some classes are going to start with a lot, some classes are going to have very little, and you can see the jumps are pretty big, right? Here, you're just like at very low numbers, then you go into the 200s, you go into the 400s. Some people will end up over 1,000, depending on, you know, what class they are.
Don't you get weapon damage only with 3 items? And like maybe some sets?
Yeah, you'd think so, but like right here, my boss damage here is 319%, so you can see 10% from Yeti and Pink Bean, so that's from a title, 31 from skills, 180 from equips, so that's mostly from weapon, secondary, and emblem, but also from set bonuses, like you said. 47% from set bonus, 51% from Legion, and you know, if I pop familiars, I can get another 90%. There's just a lot of sources working together, yeah. And it's like a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And then like during my burst, like on my arc, I have one skill that gives me 20% damage and 30% boss damage. And then I have a hyper skill that doubles it temporarily. So that skill alone gives me another 100%. And then conversion overdrive, I think, gives me up to 50% damage. So those two skills together can give me 150% extra, plus familiars, you know. But yeah, the 1,000 I said, that's more like... It's probably not that high anymore, but that's because of the old reboot passive, right? So the old reboot passive used to give you percentage damage, which meant that for classes with high percentage damage like Arc, we actually saw those diminishing returns way faster because that big clump of damage was getting too high too quickly. So everything that would add damage would not add as much percentage-wise as to other characters. So when they redid the passive to giving final damage instead, which is just a final multiplier to everything, because it final damage is its own clump, so it just looks at everything and then multiplies it by that factor, no matter how much it is. So it's a more...
It's like if your base damage is 10 and you have like 100%, it's like, okay, it's 20 now, but if your base...
No matter where the damage came from, it just doubles it always,
But if you get another 10%, it's like that's 21, but if you get like +5 on your base, that's way more in the end. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, and then it depends, right? So like, let's say that you have, let's say you deal 20 damage, and 10 of that comes from the regular sources, and 10 of that comes from final damage. And then you get a new source of final damage that is 10%, you would go from 20 to 22. But if that 10% would go onto the stack of final damage, and you would go instead of 100%, 110% final damage, then you would go to 21. Right, so it depends on where the damage is added. That makes that has an impact on what your eventual damage outcome is. Yeah.
So basically, you want to equalize every source to be like not the same, but you know, so that they all multiply.
Yeah, they all have. Yeah, they have like sweet points where if you go beyond this, it gets very. Either it gets very expensive or it takes a long time. And if you spend that same amount of time in another source, maybe you'll get more value there. Usually, when we talk about this, I usually mention what's called like comparative advantage, where if you have 10 hours and you only have 10 hours and you can spend them in a bunch of different things. Very rarely will it be the most efficient to spend 10 hours working on critical rate and 0 on working on everything else. That's probably never the most efficient. It's probably like spend 3 hours working on critical rate, spend 4 hours working on Legion level, spend 1 hour working on flames, and 2 hours working on arcane power or something like that, right? It's always going to be a mix of where you want to spend your time. And this grid keeps you kind of focused
check.
on where. Yeah, in checks it sounded a bit too aggressive, so I went I went with focused
check.
instead. Yeah,
No.
it makes
No
it so
more.
that yeah. Well, exactly. I really want to make sure that it isn't seen as like you cannot possibly stray away from this, right? This is like the Bible, and if you do anything, hell awaits you at the end.
You'll get smited by
yeah,
God.
exactly. I'll come down and smack you, and then into the pits of hell you go.
No.
This is more like a general indication. If you're roughly around those numbers, then you're good. You're on the right track, and you don't have to worry. And if there is something where you're like way too low, then you might think like, oh, maybe I take a little bit of time away from the other things I'm doing and spend a little bit more time where I'm really low. And then you just know that you'll get more advantage out of your time, more value out of the time that you spend there compared to spending it more on the other stuff.
Yeah.
That's the general idea here, yeah.
Yeah. Like Legion. I mean, Legion you can... I think, isn't Legion in there like the only thing that's like you could just go forever? Basically until you... not max it, but it's like...
Max is
think,
impossible, yeah. But...
well, 250 every character. Let's go.
yeah. Oh, wait, it goes up to 12.5k, I think, right?
I don't know.
No, it's not 250. 250, every character is only 11k Legion. The 12.5k Legion is the average level has to be over 297.
How?
No, not possible. You'd have to hand down your account like 15 generations, and your kids should be playing your account, and you still won't get it.
Yeah. Is
I don't know why they enabled this even.
Just for fun, like, is 300 now harder than 200 pre-Big Bang?
Way harder, yeah.
Easier. Really?
If
It
you're in
took
reboot now,
Feyblade
yeah.
3 years to get 200. It takes that much time to get 300?
Yeah, well, because of totem restrictions. There's a guy who's training now, Crane is training now at 288 to 289, and I believe he's getting 0.2% per hour.
Oh my god.
And then every 5 level, well, and every level, it's 10% more, right? So it's 10% less efficient per level, and then every 5 levels, it's cut in half again. So you can imagine
0.2% per hour.
Yeah. Or per hour or per totem. I don't even know anymore. It's so low that it doesn't even matter. I was watching him train for like a few minutes and he gained like 0.03. It's not, yeah.
So, like, what's the most realistic point right now? Like 275?
Well, we have, yeah, 275, yeah. We have, and the people who push a little bit harder can get up to 280, and then some people will probably wait until Odium comes out, level 275 area, to start pushing from 280 to 285.
0.2%. I could not do it. My mind would...
No, I mean, yeah, and that's like off totem and everything, because, well, yeah, you can see, this person probably, like, changed their name, oh yeah, so you see this guy here? These are the people who are actually like 291. So these are the people who are actually going for it. So these are 2 people on GMS. So this is with Frenzy Totems. These are getting like, what is this, 6 trillion EXP a day? 5 to 6 trill EXP a day. And even these people are, their ETA from 291, which seems really close, is 1,480 days for the fastest person. So that's, yeah, that's over 4 years. And then if you go to the highest reboot, which is Crane, his ETA because of the limit is 3,652 days. That's unironically 10 years, and he's at 288 here, but he got to 289 now, I believe. But that's 10 years away. So
you were talking about diminishing return.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, if you're looking for damage, this is not the place to look for it, right? This is not where you go. Oh my god, she's actually still going on her Ice Lightning as well. She's okay, she has she's probably one of the most impressive accounts as well. Like her, she had 10,017 Legion as well. Legion rate power 941. I don't know how Crane. Well, Crane's Legion is probably not too bad either.
I think my goal. I don't know. Wait, how much Legion power would be? My goal would be to start grinding Legion to get every character 140. I think that's a good first goal. No?
Yeah, I guess we got
or is
to.
that too much?
If you are trying, if you don't really, well, you kind of like leveling other characters, right? The total efficiency thing is to just make a new character, If you get to level 60, it'll count for Legion. If you get to level 70, which is really close, you also get your level 1 Link skill. So I probably just get at least to 70. And if you just make a whole bunch of characters, then eventually you'll get a lot of... you get the cheapest levels, right? You get the easiest levels that you can get access to. So 42 characters count, level 60 or higher. So if you make 42 characters that are at least level 60, then that's 2,520 levels. If they're all level 70 instead, well, now it's 2,940 levels, right? Now you're already really close, and you already have a few characters higher level. Now you have 3k Legion. Now with that 3k Legion, you can get a bunch more stats. You can have all of the level 1 links, and now you can get all the characters from level 70 to 100 really easily. And now you have 4.2k Legion. Now you have an even bigger board. Now you can get them all from 100 up to like 120 for the level 2 link, or up to 140 for the level 2 link, plus the 3rd rank of Legion up to the S rank. And then with every single step you take, all of the next characters are just going to get stronger and stronger.
Because the thing I thought about doing was like make I have like a Mercedes, Phantom, and Demon Avenger that are like in the 100 between 100 and 140.
You're a little bit further away from the microphone, by the way. Can you?
Oh yeah.
Can you get nice and hell yeah, there we go.
Nice and close.
Exactly.
And I thought like I'll just like start making new characters, get them to level 100, stop playing on them, make a new one, and while I'm grinding new characters, all the 1 to 140 characters, I would just make them do Zakum on a rotation. While I'm grinding other things, so that and I never like leveled them up manually after 100. I just let the Zakum XP do its thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the biggest value there is that you don't need to fund them at all, because just the damage of being 4th job and of leveling will be enough to kill them quickly, and you can take all the money off of them and put them into character creation coupons, right? Because at the beginning those are actually kind of expensive, so you want to take all the money off the characters and make those. Yeah, that's a good idea to do that. Just within that, you just try to keep the balance of like
still doing dailies on my main and stuff like that.
Yes, because those are going to be one of the most valuable things.
Power,
because arcane power is a source of final damage to the monsters that you're going to be killing. Plus, it's a lot of stat. It becomes a huge chunk of stat. Like if you look at full maxed symbols here is 13.2k stat is just coming from the symbols. You see, even for me with like almost 60k stat, that's still a really big part of it, right? And you see the sacred symbols is the same thing. You add these two together, that's 17.5k stat. That's that's more than a quarter of all of them.
Does the 13k well does the stat you gain from arcane and sacred power are multiplied, or they're just added?
Well, I talked about that before, right? That's one of the sources of added, and it's very easy to tell because if you look at my percentage, like I have 33 here, 30 here, 30 here, 30 here. If you add that together with 13k, you'd have like a million stat, because it would be...
it would be OP.
Yeah, I think you have like 600 to 700% stat if you're like endgame. So that would mean that this alone would become like 100k, So
the only multiplied stat are the base one from leveling and the equips, is that correct?
There's more.
Just the level?
There's more stuff. It's easier to say which ones are not multiplied because that's fewer stuff. So that's this stat here, and then the hyper stat amount. This is also not multiplied, and then your member bonus. So in Legion, everything that falls under the member bonus grid, this is also not multiplied. There might be a few more small ones, but those are the main ones that are not multiplied. Everything else is multiplied. So the grid bonus, your flame stats, your Star Force stats, your like Maple Warrior, if that gives you more stat, your base AP, all of that.
I can make like 2,000 shadowers to just give me more luck, right?
No, because the member bonus, you can put the members into the Legion board, and the grid bonus will always count on what you cover, but the member bonus can only count once per every individual class. Yeah. Otherwise, people would make like 40 Hayatos, all 5% critical damage, and have like 200% critical damage that they're running around with. That would be available.
I liked Hayato, but I saw videos saying that since it's not from KMS, there's not many updates, and it can be frustrating or something. I was like, oh, okay.
Like, it can be.
How's that? Why? Because like his kit is outdated and he doesn't do as much as other classes or something.
He just works very differently. Sometimes if there's a bug or something, a problem, it can take very long before they fix it because it's not a top priority for them. All of the devs are in Korea, so they would have to say like, "Hey Korea, look, this class is broken. Please give us a fix." And then they would have like a giant to-do list of things, and fixing Hayato for JMS and for GMS is very low on the list. So sometimes it takes months before they fix like fatal errors and stuff. There was a lot of crashing and and things with Hayato. Right now they're finally working, I think, completely the way they should. Well, not completely, but they have like one mechanic that's still a little bit weird. But at least you're not like crashing yourself all the time, so that's good. But yeah, there could be an update, and then with skill changes, and then suddenly it could be back, and then you're like, fuck, and then you can't do anything for a while. So that's a bit higher risk, yeah. But it's a solid class, and everyone levels it for the Legion benefit and for the crit damage. So.
All right. Okay. That's. I think that's good for Legion. What other things?
We have IED here. Do you know about IED? How that works?
Yeah.
Because I talked about the
know
PDR and
bosses needs it, and I just need to get it up like with time. I don't think it's that deep.
If you play other games, it's like armor penetration, right? If you only have it, it's not good, and if you have none of it, it's also not good. So you want a balance, and the numbers here look at what that balance is, where you roughly want to be, to make sure that you're not, you're not hitting the boss with a wet pool noodle, but also that you're not sacrificing too much damage.
About ID/boss damage, like I see a lot of people when they're cubing their weapon secondary emblem, they always talk about wanting 3 attack lines, right?
Yeah, that's bad.
That's bad, right?
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're giving yourself one out, right? And the fewer outs you give yourself, the higher the average cost. What you want is damage. And someone who's just chasing percentage attack is like the same person who's chasing like the highest range. In a very similar way. You might be eventually you might be doing more damage, but the extra little bit of damage that you're doing might come at such a huge cost that it's not worth going for, or not yet worth going for. It's better to spread that value over more pieces and get everything up, and then when you have more money, then you can min-max within the pieces. But in the beginning, it's more important to just get a useful line that does something for you. And that can be attack, boss damage, ID.
I was talking about endgame. Like, how do you like? That's your like ID. I know like your weapon will give you some, and like a set will give you some. But I guess also it depends on which character you play.
Yep, some characters' kits have more built in, and some.
So that's why you'll have like a 3 line, while another lacks one thing. So you want a 2 plus a IED line or something.
Exactly. It's all about that balance again. Some characters have higher, so their balance will mean that they need less. So that's why this doesn't say.
Which right now, but
yeah, and that'll become more obvious as you go. That's why here it doesn't say IED, it says functional IED. Functional IED is when you hit a boss, how much IED is being applied. Your stat window is, regardless of what attack you use and regardless of what you hit, this is how much IED you're sending the attacks with. But there is stuff that happens in between firing the attack and actually hitting the attack. There's calculations that happen, right? Bosses can get debuffed, or specific skills can get buffed, but the game doesn't know which skill you're going to get used before you're using it. So the game can only tell you, this is your baseline IED, and that's what your stat window shows. So that's what I call the visual IED. But the functional IED, that's the important one, and that can be a combination of hyperstats, boss debuffs, so that can also be increased when you're with a party, for example. Some classes have boss debuffs that they can use, and then everyone can hit more IED on the target, for example. And if you're in party with a few of these people, it's very possible that your visual IED here is only like 60%, but your functional is at this amount, is at like 93. If you put like the perfect party together, you could get so many sources of IED that you can actually get there. So it's important to know how all of those things work to make sure that you know where you can kind of like cut corners, because maybe you get like familiars, for example, with IED, and then maybe you join a party and there's, for example, Paladin.
The Android things like MF, like that thing.
The
like
Android?
Those, yeah, is that like a familiar? That's what you're talking about?
No, so the Android is something that you need Android heart for to be able to equip, and it's a robot that basically just follows you around.
There's no reason to have it. Or...
Well, you need an Android to be able to equip a heart, and you need a heart to be able to use an Android, basically. So they need each other, and the heart can have stats. So if you're trying to min-max and get as strong as possible, eventually you want an Android and a heart that fit together.
Oh, okay.
And then the Android also has a I clicked it, but the Android also has a lot of them now have a shop function as well. Where if you click on it, you can also like sell some stuff, which can be useful in certain situations. The familiars go here, where the familiar manager on the bottom left. This is where familiars go, and all of these cards that you've probably seen. Yeah, if you click those, that's where they go.
I'm not using. I've not really looked into it.
Yeah, early on they don't do very much, but you can get IED from these, and very little else. So you're basically gonna chase IED, like you talked about, like where do you even get the IED? This is one of the places where you get it. But again, for this, there's a command, right? If you type !IED, and that's shown here as well, you get a video where first video explains like what IED even is and how it works and how the calculation is, and then the second link is a calculation, and that goes into what you were talking about, like which lines do you chase and which ones are good to give you damage. And then the last link is one that shows like where are all of the sources, like where can IED come from, and then you can basically check like what do I already have, what do I not have yet, and then you want to chase it where you don't have it yet or where it is the lowest opportunity cost, right? You can see it's very high opportunity cost for weapon, secondary, and emblem because it goes at the cost of a line of boss or line of attack, whereas if you're doing your passive class skills, it's probably going at the expense of very little because you're already going to be done, right? You always have these. Or your ambition trait, like ambition only does one thing, so it's always the highest possible value. But as soon as you get to Legion member bonus, to get to your link skills, now in the beginning it's no cost, but once you have more than 12, for example, for link skills, now you're going to have to start making choices. Do you want IED or do you want another one? Which one is going to give you more damage? It could be a little bit hard to tell, but what can make it easy to tell is go back to the progression grid and look at these numbers and try to approach these numbers. And as long as if you're too low, then you need to build more IED. And if you're too high, you can maybe get away with a little bit less IED and a little bit more boss damage, for example.
Alright.
Yeah, Star Force, we'll get to that. Weapon Flame, we'll get to that. And what is the other one? Flames, we'll get to that. So boost nodes is another one that's very... boost nodes and skill nodes. That's going to be one of the big important things. So once you're getting into 5th job, the main things that are going to give you damage, one is the arcane power. 2 is going to be the...
5,
yeah, exactly, because that's final damage. 2 is the boost nodes, because also final damage, up to plus 120% final damage, so 2.2 times your damage on those skills. And then the last big one is just going to be everything else combined, which mostly has weapon, secondary, and emblem. But then all the other equips kind of combine into one big clump. Those are going to be the 3 big things that give you damage. So therefore, that's why doing your symbol dailies is very high up on the list. And you can totally see how getting up to like level 220 is a good idea, because you can already start doing symbol dailies in 3 areas. Plus you get to experience more content, a few more bosses, and you can get a better idea of, is this really the class that I want to play in the long term? And if you decide that you want to do that, then I think it's a really good idea to start working on drop rate and meso gear on your accessories and start upgrading those so you can start making more money. And then by the time you get to like 240, 250, then you'll be able to get all of the other equips like Superior Gollux equips and all that stuff, like higher Star Force equips, all of the Abzo stuff. And then you can really make the strong damaging gear if you want to keep bossing with a character. And if you don't, you'll have all the money and then you can move it on to another character instead. And by that time, you will have gotten more nodes and stuff like that. And you can use that to fund other characters in your account if you want to.
Yeah, my only question is, when do I start making item drop, meso drop?
Yeah, so around that point, I would say, like once you're like 220, you're past like 220, and you know for sure that you want to take the character all the way up to 250. I would start working on the drop and the meso gear. If by around 220 you're like, I don't know,
before even upgrading like your real equipment for more damage.
Well, so your weapon and your secondary and emblem would be first, right? And then because that's one of the bigger clumps of damage. But aside from that, the drop and accessory, drop rate and Meso obtained accessory would be right after that, I would say, yeah.
So basically, you would say epic everything, legendary weapon, secondary emblem, and then drop gear.
And then legendary drop Meso gear, yeah, exactly. And
which
because all of the other
item
damage, you want to come from your arcane power and from your boost notes. That's where you want the most of your damage to come from, not from your accessories. Accessories are there to give you the utility, to give you the nodes, right, through the drop rate, give you backup equips and stuff through drop rate, and give you as much money as possible so that you have time to do bosses and gather backups and wait for events and then put the backups, the events, and the money, all of it together to make upgrades.
Do you, like, because there's two, like, item drop. Drop items. It doesn't matter the stats because you just wear them at the end. So
exactly. It's not as it's much lesser importance. They're just there.
Drop. That's you're talking about making item drop or meso drop or both.
So meso drop is typically a little bit of a. It exists, but it's something that we don't really work on. So for this section, you have exclamation mark drop rate that I made. Because it can be a bit confusing and there's a lot of different stats going on. So essentially there's three different things. One is item drop rate, one is meso drop rate, and what is meso obtained. For most sources except for familiars, item drop rate includes also meso drop rate. Like a bag of meso is seen as an item. So if you stack item drop rate, your amount of bags that drop will also go up. You can't get more than one bag from a monster, but there is a less than 100% chance of a bag from a monster base amount. So the base amount is 66.6. The base amount is 60% chance. So you want to get at least 66.67% item drop rate. Or specific meso drop rate from familiars, right? To make sure that every monster drops a bag. Yes.
Okay.
And then once you have...
Okay,
exactly. So this is... The item drop rate is kind of like the critical rate. And the meso obtain is kind of like the critical damage, right? You want to make sure that you hit the crit first. You want to make sure that you drop the bag first. And then when it's a crit, you want to make it crit as high as possible. So when the bag drops, you want to make sure that there's as much money inside of it as possible. And that's meso obtained. And so meso obtained from equips only goes up to 100%. If you get more than lines than that, it just won't do anything. And there are 9 total accessories that can get drop or meso on the lines.
And that's basically that's the meso drop gear you work on at the end when you're trying to start farming mesos on a character at high tier levels, right?
This is before that. So this would be like at level 220. This would just be your standard training gear. And because like the term farming is kind of dead now, because you're never really going to mainly be trying to make as much money as possible. Most of the time you're just trying to train and make as much money while you're training as possible. But like the training and the EXP is going to be the most important part. Until, like you said, maybe you're trying to switch mains or you're trying to go to another character, and then one character can be specifically there to make money, but only for a very, very short duration, because you have limited totems in your account. And as soon as you have another character that you want to train and you want to get far into the game with, you're going to want to start using the totems on that character as soon as possible to get EXP. And because you're using the limited totems there, you're going to want to make as much money while you're training there as possible. So you're going to do the same thing and immediately make drop and meso gear there and start making money and start getting drops while you're training on that new character. So that other character, the only farming that character is going to do is probably boss crystals and being a bossing mule then. So that's why, and we don't really call that farming anymore at this point. So the whole concept of like having a farming character is kind of dead now. So because it cuts into your totems, and that cuts into your EXP. Yeah.
Now obviously that was a shadow around 30 mil range, which is pretty late game, but not like super late game, but it's pretty late game. And he was doing like 1 bill mesos an hour without totem. Isn't that like worth to do just in general?
Without totem?
Or no?
That's pretty...
Yeah, without totem. Or
I didn't know that was possible. Okay.
Because of Shadower, I guess, inner meso buff.
Yeah, Shadower passive, yeah. Yeah, if Shadower can make $1 billion an hour like off totem, you can definitely still use that as a farmer.
I mean,
Yeah,
at
but
that
you would
point,
invest
he's
it
a
into.
bosser slash. Yeah.
Yeah, but you would invest it into bossing mules still, because even my bossing mules that aren't like super duper strong, they can probably make a bill in about half an hour, just from like all the crystals I can sell. But you can only
but those
do
are
that.
weeklies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can only do that once a week, and the other one you can scale up as much as you want. But again, scale up, but it might be in an area that's very populated, so it might be hard to find a map. And you know, this just because one person somewhere can make these rates, I don't know how predictive that is for everyone. I hadn't really heard of people being able to make a bill an hour off totem.
It was like 900 to a bill. Like now, obviously that's perfect. Like that's you do everything perfectly for an hour.
I'd only heard about that amount on totem though, so that I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe he was lying. I don't know. It doesn't like. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is pretty pivotal though, that right? Because it is important to know. Just to tell you, like, you don't need to. Like, where my account is at, I've never made more than like 700 to 800 mil an hour ever with what I play. Like from training and everything. You can make that money. You can make 700-800 mil an hour just regular training, depending on the character. And all of the people who are like training in late game and end game with like full drop and meso gear and everything, they will make at least, if you're in like late game end game stuff, you'll make at least like 550 to 600 mil an hour while optimizing for EXP. So that's just the extra income there. So it's not that far away, because if you're doing that on a Shadower, right, you might make that much money, but then you're making 0 EXP during that time on your main character, right? So you're only going to be doing that when you're already done with all of your totems. And that's 17 totems a month, so that's already 34 hours of grinding on top of all the dailies and all the Legion stuff. So you might get to that point eventually, but it's not for everyone. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Some Celis maps? Maybe, yeah. Celis has a lot of monsters.
Yeah.
But yeah, that comes into play once the Meso Explosion starts one-shotting for Shadowers, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. That's why he could one-shot the mobs. I don't know what the map was, but it was like basically you needed the 30 mil range approximately to basically two-shot, because every Meso is like 2 lines.
Yeah,
like
sure.
The one-shot monsters to be efficient. But yeah. So basically, you need those on every character you want to go like 250 with and actually play.
It's all, you don't need to, but it's
really
it's always going to be more efficient. You're going to end up with more money in the end, and once you get to 250, you're going to get there faster. You're going to have made more money along the way. Yeah.
So you basically want like 20 Meso obtained with like 2 stats, right? That's what you want, basically.
Yeah, but that's not something you should chase, because if you look at the average cost of that, that would be too expensive. It would be inefficient to do that. You really want to take the pressure off of the accessories and just go for a total, like just like the WSE, like you want to see all of their potential lines as like one big clump and a good balance of attack, IED, and boss damage, like in those 9 lines. In the same way, you want to see like those 27 lines, I guess, of all of your accessories, as like you want 5 lines and 4 lines of item drop within that, and then just as much intellect as you can. But in the beginning, you just go to legendary, you hit meso or drop, cool, go to the next item, you know, and then just keep going to the next item. And like, let's say you end up with like 7 meso and 2 drop, then you just look at which items have meso and don't have any main stat on it, like any luck in your case, and then you re-roll those first for drop. And then hopefully eventually you end up with 5 and 4, and hopefully at least like 6 or 7 of them at least have a line of luck, and then that clump of luck is good enough for your accessories. And then you just make sure that the flames aren't absolute shit and that they have a little bit of Star Force. But again, most of the damage needs to come from the Node Stones, from the Arcane Power, from your WSE, and then it'll come from CRA stuff and from Absolab stuff once that comes in, right? Those are going to cover the damage that you need. But the accessories themselves, they're just there for the utility.
And then after you get Absolab and everything, that's when you go and get like superior Golux stuff, and you actually make like... And then you actually get one for just pure damage, and then you make another one for... You remake those Meso and item drop gear with the higher tier accessories afterwards.
Yeah, you almost never have to remake. They'll just stay or drop in Meso gear, and you'll just bring new pieces in, like the Superior Golics and like the Sweetwater stuff. Those accessories will basically start replacing the boss accessory pieces that have the drop in Meso, and you'll upgrade those specifically just for damage. Yeah, and then you get everything to 17.
Because
you get everything.
Normal monsters you can one-shot dead easily anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, even with the very shitty gear, even if you just unequip all of your accessories, you're probably just still one-shot them. Yeah. You're going to be overkilling them because you're going to get hyper stats, you're going to get Legion bigger, so you're going to get damage to normal monsters, critical damage is going to go up, everything is going to be stacking together. You're going to have Absol Weapon, you're going to have a good flame on there with a lot of weapon attack, for example.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, we could talk about the flames a little bit, I guess, because we have about 6 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we don't forget about that part, right? So again, for flames, exclamation mark flames, right? There's a recurring theme here. So I have one video where I explain completely about flames. Basically, the cliff notes is that you can see here that the stats shift, right? Like everything is moving. Yeah. And when you are flaming, you want to make sure that you are not flaming for right now, but you are flaming for the future. So you don't have to constantly redo it as your stats change. The easy example is the stats that go into flames, most of it is main stat, percentage all stat, and weapon attack. Those are, in broad strokes, the most important stats. In the beginning, you don't have a lot of all stat, right? Because where does all stat mostly come from? It comes from potential. And in the beginning, your potentials comparatively are really bad. You'll have 3 and 6%, and that's pretty much it. So a percentage all stat on a flame early on is going to be really, really good because that total clump of all stat is very small. So it's going to be a large part of that. But the further you go, comparatively, all stat is not going to be as big. And also because all stat multiplies stat, the big clump of stat that you can get on a flame is comparatively going to get better. So because that changes, we came up with this thing called the flame score. And basically what the flame score does is in the different stages of the game that you are, it'll tell you this is how much value this certain stat that gives you any kind of damage gives, so you can future-proof your flames so you don't have to constantly redo them. So you can know for every flame on every type of item, this one needs work, and this one is good enough, and you can move on to the next item. And basically, like we talked about in the beginning, more evenly distributing your resources over all the pieces so that you get optimal bang for your buck on every flame that you're using. So let's say that you are in the late game and you are flaming on a Shadower. So Shadower is a little bit separate because you have 2 secondary stats, both Dex and Strength, which means that Dex and Strength both give you some damage, and also percentage all stat is a little bit stronger because all three of the 4 stats work for you. So it's a little bit better. So we try to approximate as closely as possible.
Okay. I didn't even know. I thought it was just luck and nothing else.
Yeah. So for all the thief characters, their secondary stat is Dex, but for Shadower, Dual Blade, and Cadena, Strength is also a secondary stat. So that helps you scale a little bit better. So if you have like 1 all stat, like 4% all stat, for example, that would get to. We would say like that's a 36 flame score, for example, in late game. And if you go to end game, it goes up to 40. It actually increases because the total amount of stat goes up, and the all stat compared from late game to end game doesn't go up that much anymore because once your legendary potential, between 27 and 30% or 30% and 33%, there's not a lot of increasing there anymore. So if you actually get some more in your flames, that's actually a really good source of it. But we don't do early, and if I did early game, then 1% all stat would be like 20 or something, because comparatively it'd be really good. Yeah.
Are endgame shadowers and now I'm just talking like purely endgame? Are endgame shadowers try to go for everything all stat then, or no? It's still not worth it.
It's always a combination. So, and that's how flames work. There's so this goes into flame advantage and things without flame advantage. But basically, every time you roll a flame, you roll anywhere from 1 to 4 stats if it's not flame advantaged. And if it is flame advantaged, it's always 4 stats that you roll. And those stats, for example, 1 stat is Strength, 1 stat is Dex, 1 is Int, 1 is Luck. But there's also a stat called Strength and Dex, and that's usually about half the amount of each. There's a stat called Strength and Int, there's 1 Strength and Luck, there's 1 Dex and Int, 1 Dex and Luck, and 1 Int and Luck, right? Like every combination exists. There's 1 HP, there's 1 MP, there's 1 Weapon Attack, 1 Magic Attack, and there's 1 All Stat. So, All Stat, and then there's tiers within those. And then depending on what flame you use, and whether the item has advantage or not, there's different tiers of outcome. But because this is so complex, we usually just go away from all of that complexity and just look at the flame score and just calculate the flame score and then mirror the flame score to the values here to see, is it good enough or do you need to work on it? And that way you get away from all the complexity, like this is a tier 6 strength and dex, is it tier 5 strength, a tier 4 all stat, a tier 5 weapon attack, right? Because we just throw it into one big pile, look at the number, and then it's easier to compare. You're not comparing apples and oranges, you're comparing apples and other apples at that point. And that makes it simpler. What most people are going to end up with is hopefully a large clump of all stat and a large clump of main stat. That's typically what you end up aiming for. That's the easiest combination to get to the flame scores that you're aiming for.
Maybe I missed the explanation, but I just want to know how do you tell if an item has the advantage on the flame score?
Yeah, so the video goes over that as well. There is a database of items where you can just Control F, you can just look for the name of an item and see if it pops up or not. But like I said, the amount of stats that an item gets, if it has flame advantage, is always 4. And if it is not flame advantage, is 1 through 4. And also the tier that you get, the rolls, are also lower if it's not flame advantaged. So
does that reset every time you reflame it, or no?
No, it's just the name of the item, the type of item it is, determines whether it has flame advantage or not.
Okay.
So Superior Golics, for example, all of the Golic stuff, none of it has flame advantage. So most of the Golic stuff you'll see, the flames will just be absolutely garbage. And that's why if you look here, you look at transpose.
That's why. Can you transpose flame or no?
So transfer hammering does not bring the flame over. Transposing is always into Sweetwater items, so into level 160 items. Okay. But that is why we transpose. Yes, that is one of the main reasons, is because the items that we transpose, and transposing does cover the flame, is that the items that we use have flame advantage, and that the items we transpose into, the Sweetwater stuff, does not have flame advantage. So if you were to flame those items, you would always get shitty outcomes. But if you transpose and get a really good item, flame before you transpose, that flame gets moved over, and then you get a flame advantage flame on a non-flame advantage item. But that's why we also aim for a very high flame, because after that you can never re-roll it. As soon as you use a flame, you get a non-flame advantage roll again, and you ruin it. Yeah. So you can see the difference here, like the flame non-advantage. So you're looking at like superior stuff. By the end, like even going towards level 270, you're looking at like a 48 flame score. Whereas like a 48 flame score, that's almost what your Diacetus earring has, by the way, right? Like that's like 42. So that's like the order of magnitude difference of the average costs for outcome. And if you want to, you can play around with a calculator, and that's where the calculators come in, I guess. So typically for one all stat for you're probably flaming for endgame, so you're going to use 10, and attack use 3, main stat use 10. Let's say that you are flaming let's say the Diacetus earrings, right? So they're level, they're 130. Okay, let's do CRA, right? That's like around 150. And let's look at the grid here. So let's say you're like at this stage here, and you're trying to get, so flame score advantage, like CRA, and you're trying to get this 105, right? Because you're like at the end of late game, and you want to make sure that you have a nice flame. So we're going for 105 on the CRA. So it's going to be somewhere between 1 and 1.5 bill, anywhere from 114 to 165 flames. That's expensive, that's a lot, but compared to all the other stuff you would be doing, this is manageable, right?
Okay.
Now let's say that it was an item that actually did not have flame advantage, right? Because that's this box here. Let's say that just to do an experiment, what if we aim for like the same 105 on that item? Well, now we're looking at, this is million, billion, so... We're looking at a quadrillion almost on average. So this is like you're looking at like 100 million flames now, right?
So you're telling me there's a chance.
You're telling me there is a chance. Yeah. It is not impossible, but it's a little out there, yeah. Yeah, so some things are, you'll see people with like 160 items with like a really good book or something that have like 160 flame score. Even that you can already see like, oh, this is how lucky you got. But if you were to tick off non-flame advantage, it's not even possible.
Bill.
It would just be infinity because it's just not even. It can't possibly go that high, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 400 bill seems like that'll never happen. But if every single flame you use has like 0.01% chance or something of hitting it, if you use enough, there's a pretty good chance that if you use 1,000 flames, that you get one flame that's like a 1 in 10,000 flame, right? There's a 10% chance for that. That's a pretty good chance. And if 100 people do that, then there's a really good chance that like 10 people actually get one of those. So you're going to see some flames that are just, it seemed that they should be completely impossible, but if you just have enough people flaming, eventually it's gonna come up, right? If it's a 1 in a billion and you have 1 million people using 1,000 flames, one person is going to get it. But every single individual person is very unlikely that it's going to be them, but eventually one will get it,
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
So it might be a matter of looking, like, once you really get into a topic, really looking at the command and looking at the details, and then just asking in the chat, like, okay, do I understand this correctly? Should I do this and this and this? And either I will, help you out, or someone in chat will help you out. A lot of people in the chat have been there for quite a while and have heard me explain some of these things like 20 or 30 times. So they'll pretty much know exactly what I was going to say anyway. And they'll help you out with that. Flames are a lot less important these days because they've really been like kicked away from the drop table from bosses, and they're mostly just in event shops. Typically you don't really buy flames at all unless you're really trying to go for a really good flame on your weapon, and that can be in so to give an explanation here, so flame advantage for weapons is also pretty important, but all of the stuff from bosses is all flame advantage typically, so like Fafnir, Absolab, Arcana, like Arcane, Umbra Gear, all of that stuff is flame advantage.
Automatically flame advantage.
Yeah, just by virtue of the name. So if you have a weapon, let's say with 154 base attack, because this goes by percentages, and that's why here I have the tiers instead of the amounts, because you can have like a knuckle has or a claw has very, very low attack, and then a staff or something has like a very, very high attack. So the numbers would be all over the place, even within the tiers. So therefore I just do these tiers instead, so you know what number you're looking for. But yeah, so you're gonna have stuff that's flame score wise, the regular gear is gonna be like around, I don't know, like between 40 and 85, right? But if you have a tier 5 weapon and you have 47 and you put that in, you put in 47 here, blah, 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 then you end up with this, right? But it's like the same amount of money spent. So the weapon flame is way more important because you're gonna get like triple the value out of that compared to a single other item, just because of how much weapon attack you can get. And if it's a 62, then you're looking at.
So if you get like tier 7 weapon attack, let's say flame, but the rest is all shit, it's still worth to keep just because it's so high on attack.
Yeah, and that's here as well, right? You can see weapon flame, so you can see tier 7 is like even worth to keep. Tier 7 or tier 7 plus depends a little bit, but tier 7 is only possible with eternal flames, or with the rainbow colored ones, and even within those there's only 1% chance of hitting a tier 7. So you have to have enough of them, only 1% chance, and it has to be specifically weapon attack, so there's a lot of and you can look at that here, right? You can be like, oh, I want to do a armor, I want to do a weapon instead, and I'm aiming for tier 7, so you have to put in Eternals, right? Otherwise you can't even put tier 7 here. And no other stats. You can see like...
Where do you get those?
The Eternals?
Yeah, because I can only see the red ones to buy.
Yeah, you can't buy them. So there's a small chance from bosses, and event shops have them sometimes, but that's it.
Okay, so basically when you make gear, you can never like go for a tier 7 because
No.
you always reset it. So you have to either wait for an event where there's a shit ton of them and work on like a copy of a weapon. Like that's truly endgame, right?
Yeah. So what you'll do in the beginning is just like mass red cube at it if you have a really good weapon that you want a good flame on, or use a combination of Eternals and Powerfuls until you get what you want. And then once you have something that's really good and you want to try to improve it, you'll look for the black rainbow flames, because those are kind of like circulators and kind of like black cubes where you can choose the new flame or you can keep the old one.
Okay, but those are also event and very limited.
Also event and also very few, yeah. So you can see just to get tier 7 here, you're looking at like 330 to 475 Eternal Flames. And then even if you try to add like, like 4% damage or something, this number immediately like triples, quadruples. So you're looking at 1500 Eternal Flames. But it makes way more sense to do like 6% and maybe like 10% and like 10% total damage. That's like way more on Eternals, but like on Powerful, that's way more manageable and way more fun. But even if here I go from 10 to 12, you already see this number like go up. Now you're at like 6 to 10 bill. And if it is a really high level flame, this is doable. But some people will aim for like 15. And now this number immediately is like, okay, now it's getting a little bit spicy. Now you're like in the 50 bill range. And now it's, you know, now it's like a huge commitment. So
Okay.
that's how it's all kind of like weighed. Yeah.
That's where boss damage comes from.
Yeah,
Extra.
also some boss here. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
endgame weapons can have by itself like 120 boss damage or something. If you take the set bonus, the potential line, the built-in boss damage, the flame, you add all of that up together, some items will have like 120 boss just in the weapon, yeah.
Alright, alright.
So non-advantage, boost nodes. Yeah, we didn't go into the matrix that much, but for the matrix there's also !V matrix, where it goes into like which skills do you want to boost, right? Which boost nodes do you want to look for? Which combination of skills? And then once you have the right one, you can
Because they always have like a few,
level them up.
I don't have much, but they're all like have one skill in it that I don't care for.
It's fine in the beginning to look for 2 out of 3 nodes.
Okay.
That's how most people end up starting. What's important though is that the skill that's the primary the primary skill on the node, that is one that you eventually want to level. Because then you can always use the node that you leveled up. If you actually find your perfect tri-node, your 3 out of 3, you can always use the 2 out of 3 to just level up the 3 out of 3 and all the experience will be transferred over. If your top skill is not one that you want and eventually you have to disassemble it, you get diminishing, you don't get as many shards back as you would as you built into it. So that's not ideal. So if the top skill is one you want, then you can start committing to it if it's 2 out of 3. Yeah.
Okay, so when you disassemble it, it like separates the tri thing into 3 different nodes, right? Is that what
If you disassemble it, you just get shards back.
and
so
you
you
get
see
like
here the node shards.
100% of the XP you put into it, or no?
So that's only if you use the boost node to level up another boost node that has the same top skill. Then you get 100%.
Okay.
But if you turn it into shards, you get like... If you would have to craft as many as you would get the shards, you get like a 1/6 or something back. It's pretty inefficient.
So, okay, so that's why it's worth it if I had 2 out of 3 to just put these same 2 out of 3 nodes into it just to level it up, and then like I can disassemble it later.
Yeah, so I guess it works best with like a visual, with an example. So if you have a boost node here, like on screen, right? So it's a little weird, but the skill that you see here on the bottom left, that's the most important skill. So if you see them listed in 3, it's the one that has the picture up top. So the Creeping Terror, Blissful Restraint, Endless Agony, like that's the name of my skill. It has like 3 skills in one. And if you look at the name, it's always the last part of the name, so where it says Endless Agony. So it's in like in 3 different spots, but that's the one that decides which boost node it is. So that's also the one that decides that if you have another boost node that also starts with that same thing, you can't equip it because you can only equip a copy of every boost node one time. But if that same skill is on a second or third or on like 10 other nodes, you can equip all those other ones as long as they start with different boost nodes.
So that's why this is super important, because you can like times 5 your damage if you like have the same skill on like all the other...
So it maxes up to, in total, eventually it maxes up to level... So for boost nodes, every node can only go up to level 25, which means that you can get up to level 30 on a skill node, because level 25 in a level 5 slot, right? And so you haven't done that yet, but like the matrix points allows you to level up the slot that a skill is equipped into. So if you see here, slot enhancement, you see this one is level 5, level 5, level 5. So you see this one is level 25, but it shows level 5 enhancement, so it goes to level 30. So the highest that a skill node can go is level 30, because you can only equip one of each node, right? And the highest that a boost node can go is up to 60. So a skill can be part of 2 different nodes, or it can be part of 15 different nodes, but the total cannot go past 60 for boost nodes.
Okay.
So in the beginning, if you don't really need your skill nodes, like let's say your skill nodes are only good on bossing and not really on mobbing, you could equip a whole bunch of different boost nodes and put them all in leveled up slots and get a lot of cheap final damage. Really, really easy, right? You get like 5 boost nodes, all level 3 or something, put them all in level 5 slots, that's 8 times 5, that's like 40 levels. So that's 80% final damage. That's insane early on. But you're probably going to be equipping some skill nodes, and you don't want to level up too many different boost nodes, because like I said before, once you have to extract them, you get fewer shards back, so you don't want to spread yourself too thin early on.
Alright. think, yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of things, and for a lot of stuff we weren't able to go too much into detail, right? Because you're very new, so there's a lot of information to go through.
Yeah.
But definitely go through the commands if there's a topic that you're like, okay. And then a bunch of stuff will make sense based on what we talked about now that you'll be able to connect it to. And then some other stuff will maybe go a little bit too fast, or you won't need it yet, so you can kind of come back to the video later. But a lot of the stuff will be either explained in the video, or you can ask someone in chat or ask me, throughout the stream if you're coming back, If you don't run screaming,
I don't need you anymore. Bye-bye.
Well, that's kind of my goal, though. My goal is to kind of explain all of these structures and how everything works, so that people don't have to ask me literally everything, right? So they can just look at the command if you need extra information, or look at the patch notes and see like, oh, this is how it's changing. I understand how that works, and and there's specific discords where all the shadowers come together. For example, if you have specific shadower questions, and YouTube videos, and there might be other progression sessions with maybe a shadower that's a little bit further into the game, so you can kind of see where they're at and what kind of stuff they're doing. All of these things together will help you out. But it's easy to be a little bit overwhelmed right now because it's so much stuff. But you don't need everything right now. So as long as you have a little bit of a taste of everything, and the progression grid, you got the dailies, like what level to look at these things. And then, if you try and you're way too weak, then you can look at the progression grid and be like, okay, I'm way too weak. Where am I way too far away from the number that's here? It's like, oh, okay, I'm trying this boss. I can't kill it. Every number is good, but my IED is like 50%, and here it says that it should be around 85%. Okay, I need to work on IED. Then you can do ! IED. Okay, what is IED? Where can I get IED? Oh, here's the list of all of the sources of IED. Okay, let me work on this one a little bit more. And then once the IED catches up to the progression grid and you level, maybe your IED is now like 90s. Like, oh, okay, that's okay for a while. I don't have to worry about it. Maybe my Legion is really low. Maybe I work a little bit more on Legion now. And this way you won't neglect any part of the damage, basically.
All right.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah, but I'll manage.
Yeah. You got some homework, but
Legion skill good. Legion trained.
Yeah, Legion is specifically very good if you're planning on playing a lot of different characters, because it is free funding for all of your characters, right? Since you don't have trade transfer. Oh yeah, that's another one. Definitely check out the Transfer Hammer video for all of the restrictions on it. That's a very important one to watch. But since we don't have trade, Transfer Hammer is very important so that you can maintain some of the value and bring it with you to the next pieces, so it's not all lost. And Legion is really important because we don't have transfer, because it helps you get a baseline of damage, mainly in the form of all of these stats, to all of your new characters that you start playing, to make sure that you don't need to do everything with money, right? You can keep your money for your important characters, and everything else just gets funded by themselves.
The link skills and the Legion stats will be enough to just fund the character to, like, if you're like 8K Legion with link skills in between, is that enough for like what, 220, 200? How far can you go with just link skills and Legion? My marksman got lucky on some stuff, but for example, like my marksman got to level 250 with some of my equips, like my glove was like 6% dex, 12 stars. Like I never got any Abso pieces on it, for example, and I got all the way to 250 on that. And you could one-shot mobs.
Yeah, you just one-shot mobs, no problem. Because again, the damage, as long as your arcane power is there and your boost nodes are there, you can get a lot of stuff done. You add in Links and Legion, you add in good CRA gear, monsters don't stand a chance.
So right now, with my current range, should I, just final question, I guess, do I focus on Legion Link to finish getting like all 12 links and a bit more Legion stats, or do I go right away for 235 to try to get all the arcane dailies going on?
Straight up to 235 might be a lot, because you did mention you don't know if you want to do the character all the way, right? I think it's okay to, as long as you have totems, to work your way towards 220. I think is a good point. Then you have 3 areas that you can do the dailies for, and then you can start doing a little bit more bosses and start really feeling if you really like the character or not. And you can keep doing the dailies and work on your Legion a little bit while you're trying to like figure that out. And if you then decide I really want to keep going with the character, then you go into like the drop in the Meso gear that we talked about, and then you focus more on the leveling, specifically on trying to get all the areas, right? To try to get the symbols. And then once you get to 235, you focus mainly on like doing a lot of dailies and doing bosses, and then you have a bit more time for Legion. And if you want to commit, and then once the Legion catches up, like up to 4K and stuff, then you can commit again more to leveling the main character towards 250, for example.
Yeah, it's like a lot of characters I didn't like at first. It's like the Aaron, you see, that's my other 200. Up to 200, I was like, meh. But then I got the V skills, and I was like, bro, this shit is amazing.
Some characters, I always say, like, characters are made or broken by their 5th job.
Yeah.
Some characters are
like
boring as fuck.
Like the bind and like all the fucking ice shooting down. It's like, oh, that's...
Yeah, that one was added pretty late, but it was a really good addition to their kit, yeah. The 4th Vs were really good at rounding out characters' kits.
Or even Shadow, where it's like, oh, it's a bit lackluster. Oh shit, my V's at 25 damage, 25 crit passive. That's pretty good. That makes it feel way better. It's like, you know, it's like, you know, I have to grind a lot of characters and see really which one is which.
Exactly.
Like, you see videos, but it's like, it doesn't...
Yeah, it's hard to tell how much of that comes from which source. How much of it is like a really good player, or they have like a huge Legion and strong link skills, or the character is actually just really good, or it's a combination of all three. It's really hard to tell if you haven't gotten that far yourself yet. Last question. Okay, here we go.
Last question. This is something I've been wondering. You know, they say about like some classes are, oh, this is a good low funding class. Like you don't need to put a lot to make it work, but. Like, why does, like, for example, a Night Lord, for example, which is a high you need to fund it a lot, it becomes, quote-unquote, better than, like, an Aaron, which is considered a low-funding class? If it's better early on, wouldn't it be better with the exact same amount of progress? Like, that's what I'm not getting.
One of the main things that plays a role in that is final damage. If you have a lot of final damage... you will scale, all of your upgrades that you do will just be more valuable the further you go. And if your character doesn't rely as much on final damage, which is a final multiplier, but more on things like percentage damage and that kind of stuff, there you see more diminishing returns. So
that's why Hero is such a good class late game.
They get to a lot of final damage, and then they can do very crazy things, But Hero is more limited by their mobility and by the amount of lines that they can put out. So that's another thing that Night Lord is very good at, is they can put out a lot of individual lines of damage. And one thing that you can consider is if you do a lot of lines of damage, the individual lines are very small, right? Because it has to be balanced compared to people who do fewer lines of damage. But if the people who do fewer lines of damage can like max out their damage, that means that they're done. They can't possibly get any stronger. But someone who does way more lines has a bigger potential for damage because all of the individual sources start lower, so by the time they get to maxing that out, they can keep building on that, right?
Okay, they hit that sweet spot sooner, but they also drop off sooner, and the other ones take longer to reach that sweet spot. But once they do, it's a bit more damage than the other ones.
Yeah, and the main reason why it's mentioned for classes like Night Lords is they have what I call particle effects, where you have assassin's marks that fly around and they do additional damage. When it comes to mobbing, typically early on, very, very early on, those particle effects will kill monsters because they're so weak. But then very quickly on, the particle effects will just start tickling monsters and won't really kill them. And it'll be like a little bit of nice extra damage for bossing. But if you get really, really, really strong, those particle effects can actually start killing. Exactly, like Meso Explosion, like Assassin's Creed. Now it doesn't do anything, especially if you just get into Vanishing Journey. They
even
barely
when I
see.
train, it's like I'd have to spam it like 10 times to kill one mob.
Exactly. But if you get way more funding and boost nodes and everything on it, and the Meso Explosion can start killing, well, now you can start full clearing whole maps, and now you really start popping off.
I really like the Shadow War burst, and when you combine every skill at the same time, it's just 3 billion lines.
Exactly,
It just sucks that it doesn't have a bind skill, though, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. And some characters suffer from that. Well, Explorers in general suffer from that quite a bit. There's only 2 Explorers that have a bind. But that's also something that comes into play when you're talking about like low funding classes and like an easy bossing mule. Usually it comes down to, do you have your own bind, and do you have like high critical rate and high IED? Because critical rate and IED is really the foundation of all classes in this game. If you don't have crit rate, your damage is going to suck. You don't have IED, your boss damage is going to suck. You need those two stats, otherwise you're just nothing's going to happen.
That's why Aaron feels so nice, because most of the spell has like 100% crit rate, 100%
Yep.
IED. It's like...
Yeah, and very high IED. Yeah, you have like Demon Slayer, Aaron as well. Like Marksman has very high crit rate and high IED. There's a bunch of classes that have that, and they will not struggle as much early on. But because they don't struggle as much early on, their final peak for most of them isn't as high. But Demon Slayer just keeps getting buffed in Korea, so those are actually very very solid investment. Yeah.
Demon Avenger will catch his brother at some point.
I think right now is the closest that we're gonna get. In the future, DA is getting nerfed again, and DS is getting buffed again, so they're taking off again. They were very far ahead of us for very long, and I think now we're probably as close in the foreseeable future as we're gonna be.
Because the only thing I really like about Demon Avenger was his weapon. It looks so good. Like when you have a high tier weapon, like Desperado looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that the class that's been left a bit behind. But
Yeah, right now we made a big move that we got a lot closer, but we're looking at nerfs again with Ignition apparently. So I think we're still being in an okay spot.
You're not last place on the damage grid, bro. We gotta put you back there.
Yeah,
Like,
apparently
whoa,
went from last to first and then back down. Yeah. Okay. Well, we went
right.
significantly over time, but you had a lot of stuff to look at. But yeah, I'll upload it on YouTube so you can watch it back there. And we should have yeah. I mean, I'm always here, stream every day. So any other questions you have, I'll always be there to help you out.
Well, you know. Maybe I'll come back in a year.
Yeah.
Progress.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how much further you got. You'll be soloing that Black Mage, right?
Yeah. 1 year only. Yeah, easy. 100k stats. Let's go.
Easy clap. Easy clap. You know, with all the power creep that's coming, you'll get it in no time. I believe in you.
Anybody in the chat wants to? No, I'm kidding. All right. Ciao.
No
nice
reason.
talking.
Yep. Yeah. I wish you good luck, and I'll see you around.
All right, thanks.
All right, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
All right, cool. So if you're also a completely new player, hopefully that was it was a lot of information, but hopefully that was some intro to where you can get started if you have absolutely no idea where to start. And of course, there's 200 commands in my chat that you can use in Twitch chat, or by twitch.tv/Scardor, where you can get all the information for the individual topics. Some of it might be a little bit too in-depth, some of it you might not need yet, but it's good to have some kind of idea of where a certain topic is going to make sure that you are kind of like future-proof and you know where the information is when you do need it. With all that being said, I will, this upcoming week, or maybe next week, we're going to be doing the progression sessions as well for the people who won in the comment section for August. So make sure that if you want to win for September, that you leave a comment that you would like to win with your Discord name, and 2 of you will be lucky winners that will get a free session like this with me. If you don't want to wait for the lottery for a free session, you can either use channel points on the Twitch channel if you're subscribed, or you can do a direct donation, and the price list and all of the information for that are available through the Twitch chat and also through the description of the video. So hopefully I was able to entertain and inform some of you, and hopefully you are through with your totem and your grinding and you enjoyed listening to the rant and all of the information that we talked about. So I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you either on the next video or I'll see you on the Twitch chat where I stream every day, like I mentioned, and you can talk to me in real time. So thank you, and I'll see you then.